The trust fund Ponzi scheme inheriting pseudo-commando wannabe Kirkland brand Hugh Hefner.
How, you may ask, does this billionaire playboy philanthropist finance his life?
I beat one guy for 54 million. I won 10 and a half in another night. I beat another guy for 10.
Today, the name Dan Bilzerian doesn't scream luxury or dominance anymore. It screams collapse. In just a short time, he's bled over 3 million followers. His once hyped Ignite stock that flirted with $250 has completely vanished from the exchange. And freshly uncovered investigation files show nearly $6 million in phantom revenue floating around like smoke. People thought it was just another party boy scandal. But this story cuts much deeper than a wild weekend gone wrong. This is the tragedy of a brand built on smoke and mirrors, crumbling under the weight of cold, hard numbers. Dan once sold himself as the definition of untouchable. But the higher he climbed, the bigger the gap grew between the glittering lifestyle on Instagram and the brutal reality inside his financial reports. And when those two worlds finally collided, the explosion was inevitable. Now Dan stands as a walking warning sign, proof of what happens when blinding glamour gets crushed by a real-world balance sheet. We've only seen the surface so far. Followers vanishing, stocks disappearing, $100 million deals wiped out overnight by reckless comments and messy scandals. But what's lurking beneath the surface is even scarier. Unexplained invoices, hidden emails, and one reckless choice in the financial statements, a tiny spark that ended up burning down the whole empire. So the question is, was this collapse just one big accident, or was the truth buried from day one? Nothing has been openly confessed, and if you blink, you might miss the darkest secret of all. Remember, not too long ago, the name Dan Bilzerian was like a golden passport to a world of luxury, excess, and untouchable status. Just dropping Dan Bilzerian's name used to be a golden key. Doors swung open to wild VIP parties, million-dollar penthouses, and fat Instagram brand deals. At his peak, he was pulling in nearly 400,000 new followers every single month, flexing a $65 million mansion like it was nothing.
While Dan did play very aggressive, I wouldn't say that he played all that great. In fact, there was some serious button clicking going on in this match. I think that maybe he could beat some high-stakes, very soft live games, but on the internet...
Always surrounded by an endless lineup of models. People weren't just watching for the cars or the cash. They were watching because Dan felt like the living symbol of being untouchable. A man playing by his own rules. But here's the catch. The more the world worshipped that untouchable image, the faster the fall was brewing behind the scenes. And the red flags didn't come from wild parties or supercars tearing up LA streets. They came from something way less flashy. The numbers. Hidden invoices, phantom revenue lines, and bloated expenses started creeping through the reports, and what looked small and harmless at first turned into damning evidence once investigators connected the dots. Piece by piece, the polished image started peeling away, revealing a much darker truth behind the lights and filters. The so-called empire was looking less like a kingdom and more like a fragile castle made of sand. And once the storm hit, even Dan, the self-proclaimed king of Instagram, couldn't stop the cracks from spreading. Then came the lawsuit bombshell. Out of nowhere, Dan's name was pulled into the case of Bradley Ruman, a Beverly Hills businessman slapped with 10 years in prison for running a $44 million Ponzi scheme. The Ruman estate claimed money lost at the poker table had to be clawed back. And guess who ended up pocketing some of those shady winnings? Dan Bilzerian himself. Legally, he wasn't the mastermind behind the Ponzi scheme. But the moment his name showed up on the payout list, he got tangled in the claws of a lawsuit. The logic was simple but brutal. If Bradley Ruman's gambling stash came straight out of the Ponzi pot, then even people who won that money fair and square could be forced to give it back to repay the victims. That meant Dan's so-called clean winnings were suddenly labeled as dirty cash. And here's the wild paradox. His entire brand was built on the legend of being a poker millionaire, a bold, fearless player with unmatched skill. But now this lawsuit dropped the first serious seed of doubt. Was Dan really stacking chips because of talent, or did he just get lucky cashing out on somebody else's scam money? The internet wasted no time clowning him, dropping sarcastic comments like, rich from poker or rich from a Ponzi. The glamorous facade that once looked bulletproof was now showing cracks, and fans who once bowed down to the king of Instagram started side-eyeing him like maybe it was all smoke and mirrors.
This could be you. Money, nice watches, badass cars, girl, Victory Poker. All you got to do is submit a 1-minute video, and you could be like this.
The lawsuit itself wasn't massive enough to crush him outright, more like a hairline fracture in the shiny wall of his empire. But perception is everything, and this was the moment the audience's admiration turned into suspicion. That shift was huge, from worshiping his luxury lifestyle to questioning whether any of it was real. And the strangest part, Dan didn't say a word. He stayed totally silent, offering no defense, no explanation, nothing. That silence made the mystery even louder, leaving everyone wondering what he was hiding. Not long after, the scandal started snowballing, each one smashing Dan Bilzerian's flashy image like hammer blows. One of the most infamous moments came during a photo shoot with model Janice Griffith. In a reckless stunt gone wrong, Dan's careless move left her injured, and the internet went crazy. The clip spread like wildfire, fueling waves of outrage mixed with brutal ridicule. If the Ruderman lawsuit had already planted doubts about where his fortune really came from, this incident revealed something even uglier. Dan's recklessness wasn't just financial, it was physical. What once looked like the dream lifestyle of the ultimate playboy suddenly looked like proof that he didn't care who got hurt as long as he kept up the spectacle. Sure, the incident didn't explode into a massive lawsuit, but the damage was done. That one reckless move carved a deep crack in the untouchable image he spent years building. From that day on, people didn't just question whether his millions were real. They started questioning his judgment, his morals, even his sanity. Audiences kept watching, but not out of admiration anymore. Now they were waiting for the moment his arrogance would finally come crashing down on him. His lifestyle went from number goals to a ticking time bomb, a constant gamble with other people's safety and with his own reputation. And the haunting question lingered. How long could a glory built on recklessness last before it detonated into complete disaster? Then came the real blockbuster, the scandal that didn't just chip at his image, but crushed the backbone of his empire. This wasn't about parties or wild nights. This was about Ignite, the company that burned through millions, racked up losses, and exploded in allegations of fraud. So what really went down? Leaked files spilled the truth. Former Ignite chairman Curtis Heffernan straight up accused Dan of treating company funds like his personal piggy bank.
Bilzerian's going broke, like he's, fleeing the country, he's going to jail, Ignite's going bankrupt, it's like all this stuff. And it was just funny because I think I was worth like 375 million at the time or so. I was like worth more then than I'd like almost ever been.
The receipts were jaw-dropping. $15,000 blown on a ping pong table, $200,000 torched on a mansion rental. What once looked like Playboy extravagance instantly turned into courtroom evidence. Then, to make it worse, a reckless one-liner Dan tossed to TMZ dragged him into a defamation case that ended with a crushing $6.5 million judgment hanging over his head this year. Meanwhile, the foundation of trust around Ignite was collapsing. The company posted nearly $70 million in losses in just 1 year. Way too big to blame on marketing expenses. Instead, it screamed of chaos at the top, with investors sprinting for the exits. Soon, the brand that once strutted across the stock market quietly disappeared, like a ghost everyone wanted to forget. But the real bombshell didn't come from parties or bad press. It came from the feds. When the SEC and DOJ dug in, they uncovered allegations that Ignite had been inflating revenue with fake invoices. Suddenly, the glossy image turned blood red, and the scandal reached back into Dan's own bloodline. That's when his father's name resurfaced, Paul Bilzerian, a man who had already served time for securities fraud. The sins of the father came roaring back, and now the shadow of Paul's past was stamped all over Dan's empire. Reports revealed potential penalties reaching $180 million in fines, plus years of ballooning interest and contempt of court rulings piling up like bricks on his back. At that point, Ignite wasn't a lifestyle brand anymore. It was a financial time bomb. Every investor saw the danger. Every partnership came with massive risk, and every potential deal was slashed down to scraps. Why was this the knockout blow? Because when a family's dirty legal legacy is tied directly to the business, no amount of flashy PR or Instagram flexing can save it. Overnight, Dan Bilzerian's journey flipped from million-dollar playboy to billionaire entrepreneur whose empire was rotting from the inside out.
Like no peace before. So I don't know, man. I'm not like an extremist. I just go all the way this direction, all the way this direction.
And just like that, it all crumbled. 3 fatal blows took him down. First, the doubts over his wealth, then the reckless scandals, and finally, the federal litigation storm that ripped away the Instagram shine and left Dan Bilzerian looking less like a Playboy king and more like a fallen figure caught in an endless maze of audits, lawsuits, and corporate chaos. When Ignite's dirty laundry spilled out, Dan's reaction was calculated but strange. At first, he stayed totally silent, which only fueled the mystery. Then came long, drawn-out denials, insisting, "I'm not directly involved," with his lawyers stepping in to do the heavy lifting. After that, he went on the offensive, firing back with counterclaims and lawsuits, trying to claw his way out of the mess. It was a double-edged strategy. Stay quiet in public to dodge heat, while using the legal system behind the scenes to protect whatever reputation he had left. But while Dan played his legal chess, the audience went through their own transformation. Fans who once worshipped the Instagram king and poker millionaire started leaving comments like, "I can't believe he's capable of being such a terrible person." That image of the unbeatable player, the high roller living outside the rules, was cracking apart. Some fans even admitted they felt satisfaction, almost like justice was finally catching up to him, while others were bitter, realizing they'd spent years hyping up what now looked like a total illusion. And it wasn't just fans turning cold. Investors and business partners who once threw money at Ignite suddenly pulled back, treating him less like a celebrity and more like a high-risk liability. The applause, the envy, the blind support, all of it faded. In its place, a growing mountain of court filings, subpoenas, and legal documents with Dan's name stamped on every page. The big question, when the courts close in and the public no longer buys the image, can a reputation like Dan Bilzerian's ever be saved? Or does all that glory fade into memory? His downfall proves the lesson. A reputation built on glamour and reckless spending can vanish overnight. Ignite lost more than $50 million in a single year. Its stock crashed so hard it was delisted, and investors ran for cover. On Instagram, the slide was just as brutal. Over 1 million followers gone in 12 months, engagement down nearly 40%, and brand deals that once made him millions each month evaporated. The Instagram king had become a textbook case of what happens when an empire is built on illusion, not substance. In the end, no mansion, no models, no PR spin could save him. His rise exposed the truth. Glamour is never a solid foundation. A throne built on parties and staged snapshots isn't real gold. It's plastic painted gold, easy to crack with the slightest pressure. And once trust is broken in business, no apology or payout can ever bring it back. Contracts gone, partners vanished. The applause that once shook the room now replaced with mocking laughter. On a personal level, the crash didn't just strip away fame, it crushed the oversized ego that came with it. The man who once called himself a king now faces the bitter truth. The crown on his head was nothing but shiny paper. One gust of wind, and it's gone forever. And the wildest part, the audience wasn't just watching, they were part of the collapse. They hyped him up when the spotlight was bright, then turned their backs the second the act was over. Social media can launch someone into the sky overnight, but when the storm hits, that same machine rips away all shelter and leaves nothing but wreckage behind. Fame isn't a gift, it's a loan. And when the day of repayment comes, the interest will break you harder than any contract ever could. So the question remains, do you chase the fleeting applause or do you build for respect that lasts? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you made it this far, sound off. Was Dan Bilzerian always destined to fall, or could he have saved himself? Make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you want more deep dives like this.